Alright, I'm gonna try this again. So, today's day 5, and earlier this morning I had a setback. I had a fall. Now, normally, normally that wouldn't be a problem, but since I've had this surgery, um, yeah. And it wasn't a bad fall. I didn't hit my head or didn't really hit my upper body against anything. It was just, if you've ever seen any old comic routines from Abbott Costello or Three Stooges, Fatty Arbuckle, basically it's a fat guy just landed on his ass. That's all that happened. But when it did happen, I decided to lay down fully on the floor. Of course, my dad heard this. Yeah, that's right. I live at home with my dad still. Excuse me. It is what it is. He needs help sometimes. I need help sometimes. So that's, how it is. Anyway, he comes in. He immediately asks, can I feel my legs? Do I feel numbness anywhere? And I'm like, no, Dad, I don't feel any numbness anywhere. I didn't. Really, the only thing I did was really affect my lower back. And and while that's bad, that would not be as bad as injuring a fresh surgical site like my neck. So very fortunate in that regard. Now, um, I have these spells where I don't really um, know what starts them. I just know that I've seen myself on camera. I have a camera set in my bedroom. Not for that reason, guys. Nothing like that. It's cause I have cats, and my cats have the option of going outside and coming and going as they please. And so when it's night and I'm curious and I've got a little bit of time at work, I will just pull up the pull up the security camera and look and see, make sure the cats that are on my bed or whatever are all right, and nothing's gone wrong, and there's not any extreme emergency I need to take care of. But at the same time, this is also pretty useful in seeing whatever happens to me. But usually the only thing I can see is just like my legs from the calves down. It almost looks like a terrible cartoon like, Cow and Chicken or whatever back in the day where you only see the parents' legs, or, the Muppet Babies, or, just any of this old crap from my childhood I can bring up. Anyway, what I noticed was I was standing in the same spot for quite a bit, and it looked like I, lost my balance and then fell backwards. I can only imagine it's because I stood up and was still asleep or partially asleep. It's something I've got to take and look more into. Of course, I'm dealing with pain now. The pain that I have dealt with is mostly, I want to say they call it deferred pain. Even though it's supposed to be pain in my neck, my shoulders ache. It's like no big deal. And it's also probably because I'm sleeping in a different position than I was pre-surgery. I had a pretty comfortable position pre-surgery, and had full movement of my neck and whatever. So This is, definitely something to get used to. It's, kind of disturbed my sleep on a certain level, but again, before I already had issues, sleeping problems anyway. Now, I have determined, there are certain things I can do physical wise, around the house to keep myself from going stir crazy. Because, I mean, even though I only work 4 days a week and it is part time, it's still time that I would be busy or interacting with people or, doing something at work. And so to do that, I've just been, doing small things around the house that, I haven't really been doing for a while. Just because I would hurt too much, or I just couldn't devote that energy to it and still expect to be functional at work. Uh, that is also a problem I face as well. I have, like I've said before, I have other issues, and the other issues do affect my life. They affect what I can do, when I can do it, and but again, it's one of those things where it is what it is. There are certain things I can do to help, some things that I can do that won't help. But in the long run, this is for the best. I, I've already, my fingertips and everything and my right hand are getting better, day by day, a little more, just a little more, just a little more. And that's something that's very important for me, because if I do not have my use of my dominant hand, then uh, it really does affect what I can do. My left hand, I've I can tell I still got the carpal tunnel and everything, and you know it was that hand that I put off never having surgery on, because it was my non-dominant hand, and I've always had the concern with it's like, okay, something wrong with my right hand, has to be done soon. If I don't, I'm gonna be in trouble. And just like you saw there, occasionally I had to roll my shoulders or stretch a certain way, because I'm just not used to having my head in this position constantly. Trying to think, is there anything else that I went through in the past day or so that would be useful for someone else to know about? Uh, you know, um, if you have the surgery and you're wearing a neck brace, don't be afraid to bend over to do things, so long as you keep your head in the proper position. Don't try to do a whole lot of looking or reaching up above you, because that's just not your thing at this point in time. That will come with time. Once you have this surgery, and the surgery, the bone grows in and everything starts to really lock in. Then you will have the opportunity to figure out what your mobility has been truly limited to, uh, in that regard. Now, something that it's annoying. It it will it's drove me crazy as well. and that is I have not shaved since the day of the operation. You can probably see my, everything stubble coming in, and just because of hygiene reasons, I have been very hesitant about shaving, and all the stubble underneath the bandage and everything around it as any other wound, I most people have, begins to heal, it starts to itch. And it's not like yeah, it's not like it's not like breaking an arm when you were a kid or something. And damn it, there we go. You don't have the option of grabbing like a doll rod or a stick or something and just fishing it in there on a cast like on an arm or a leg and scratching. It just ain't happening. So it's really one of those deals where it's almost like um, I can liken the itching sensation to like when I was a kid and the annoyance of having chicken pox. Uh, Not a whole lot of young people know about that. They got vaccinated. They don't have to deal with it. But for us older individuals who did get it as a child, we know how annoying that was and how very, very hard it was to resist the urge to scratch at that. It would almost get to the point for some people where their parents would, like put oven mitts on their hands and like tape them down to try to keep them from scratching because it's bad. It's not quite to that level yet, but I'm hoping it doesn't get to be to that level. Um, in the meantime, I'm kind of, waiting for a a new cordless, waterproof, whatever uh, shaver to come. You know, again, it's a dual purpose thing. My dad, he likes to have a beard, but he doesn't have a really good way of keeping it from going all Grizzly Adams on him. So this purchase here benefits to both of us. And, uh, the fact that it has like a fancy little cleaning pod with it and all this other stuff to help sanitation wise on it, it's gonna be a real big help for me whenever I go to tackle all this underneath this bandage one night. Once I get up enough courage to do it, that's my biggest fear is always gonna be getting that infected wound or getting some sort of infection because I didn't do my due diligence in hygiene and sanitation. Yeah, I know. There you go, little guy. Climbing all over me like Tobey Maguire in a black Spider-Man outfit. For the last time, you can't climb on me, little guy. And you can't bite my face either, okay? You can sit in my arms and purr. Don't bite the mic. Yes, yes, I know you're mostly a little black kitty with just a little bit of white spot on your tummy tum tum. But I won't. Damn it! What did I tell you, Toby? Quit it, Toby. What did I tell you, little guy? You gotta be nice when you're on camera. You gotta be nice. Because if you're not nice, Well, there's not a whole lot of love for people, when it comes to little black kitties like you. The world's a cruel place. You don't really get adopted all that fast, and there are superstitious people out there who just don't understand that having you guys around is pretty good. Yeah, you're great rodent control. You being dark like that gives you an advantage at night in the shadows, just looking at people. Ah, come on, no, no, no. Yes, I know you don't like the contraption on me either, little buddy. But we both gotta deal with it until it's done, okay? Ah, no, no, no. Can't get her to earphone yet either. That's not a good idea, okay? Alright, guys, he's not gonna leave me alone, so I'll let you guys go until the next epiphany or whatever I have on this road recovery I got. Have a good time, folks.